Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Great to be here.
So today we're jumping into a really timely article by Dr. Siddiq Al-Zayla'i.
Yeah, the one from this April, reflecting on the '85 uprising after 40 years.
Exactly. 40 years since the April 1985 uprising, a reading from our current reality of the experience. He's basically looking back at how Sudanese people overthrew President Nimeri back then.
And trying to pull lessons from that for the crisis Sudan's facing right now after the coup and the war.
Right. So our mission here is kind of figuring out what history can tell us about the current mess.
And Dr. Al-Zaylai really connects the dots, doesn't he? Between that '85 moment, which was the second time people ousted a military regime, remember?
Oh, right, after 64.
Yeah. He connects that to today's challenges. The core idea is that the reasons why people rejected military rule then, the need for civilians to unite, the whole situation with civil society, especially unions, and, the role certain political groups played. It's all incredibly relevant now. He sees it as vital for understanding the threats Sudan faces.
Okay, let's maybe start with 85 itself. Why was it such a watershed moment? It wasn't just swapping one leader for another, was it?
Oh, definitely not. It was a really powerful, peaceful statement from the Sudanese people basically saying, enough with military rule.
A consensus against it.
Exactly. And Dr. Al-Zaylai highlights how strong that feeling was then compared to now, where you hear some voices seemingly okay with continued military control.
Which brings us to the justifications, right? Why do military regimes say they should be in power? The article really picks apart Nimeri's claims.
It does. Take economic development, for instance.
Yeah, the breadbasket of the world idea.
Right. But the article shows how Nimeri's rule actually led to, economic disaster. There was some initial money, sure, but corruption, bad management.
It led to debt, famine.
Massive debt, famine, the currency collapsed. So that whole breadbasket thing, just rhetoric. It shows the danger, Unchecked military power often misuses resources.
And the stability argument, that the military brings security.
Well, Dr. Al-Zaylai flips that. Nimeri's regime had constant coup attempts. And crucially, it made the civil war in the south worse by deliberately messing with the peace agreement from '72.
So instability breeding instability.
Pretty much. He connects that pattern directly to the violence against civilians we see today. Military rule often fuels conflict. It doesn't prevent it.
What about the idea of the army as the great unifier, the only truly national institution?
The article basically calls that a myth. Using force isn't how you manage diversity. It usually just makes divisions deeper. A military approach often prioritizes control over the dialogue needed for real unity.
Okay, but what about the current argument? That the army needs to stay in charge to defeat the Rapid Support Forces, the RSF.
Ah, yes. This is where the article gets quite pointed. Dr. Al-Zaylai essentially asks, well, hang on, who built up the RSF in the first place?
The army itself was involved.
Exactly. The article highlights the Army's role in creating and empowering the RSF, which really challenges the idea that fighting them now justifies the Army holding on to power.
So if military rule is the problem, what's the answer, according to the article? Seems like unity is key.
Popular unity, yes. Absolutely crucial. Dr. Al-Zaylai talks about unity and diversity. It's not about erasing differences, but getting different groups behind core goals.
Like in '85.
Precisely. That uprising worked because various forces came together to get rid of the dictatorship and push for democracy.
And that unity had benefits afterwards, too.
Yeah, the article mentions cleaning up the trade unions, getting rid of old regime loyalists, and there's an interesting example from '88.
Oh, yeah.
The Communist Party chose to support the fragile democratic system rather than push for its overthrow after a crisis, showing, strategic unity for the bigger picture.
That kind of unity seems lacking now, or at least after the 2019 revolution. The article suggests that's a big part of the current problem.
A huge part. Dr. Al-Zaylai argues that civilian groups became too divided after 2019. Parties focused on their own interests instead of the revolution's goals.
Which weakened the transition.
Exactly. It weakened the transitional government, making it easier for the 2021 coup to happen and, leading towards the current war. He really stresses the need for a shared national project democracy, rule of law, equal rights.
Let's talk about civil society. Trade unions were massive in '85, weren't they?
Oh, fundamental. The general strike they led was the final push against Nimeri. The Sudanese Professionals Association, the SPA, sort of inherited that public trust in 2019.
But something went wrong.
Well, Dr. Al-Zaylai argues a big chance was missed. The SPA wasn't really democratic itself, and instead of focusing on rebuilding unions from the ground up democratically,
They got caught up in politics.
yeah, political infighting, basically. And the old regime security people were reactivating old, controlled unions, blocking real independent ones. Plus, bureaucracy got in the way.
So a failure to reform the unions contributed to the later problems.
That's the argument. A missed opportunity by the forces of freedom and change and the transitional government. It weakened a key pillar of civil society just when it was needed most.
Okay, one last major theme. The relationship between the Islamist political movement and the military. The article is quite critical here.
It's very critical. It puts forward this idea of the Islamists using the army like a Trojan horse, meaning they realized they couldn't win power democratically or through other means, so they strategically infiltrated the army over years.
Even though they'd opposed military rule before.
Exactly. The article points out their history. Coup attempts against Aboud, opposing Numeri initially, armed opposition in the 70s. But then a shift happened.
Under Tarabi.
Yes, after the 77 reconciliation. Publicly supporting Numeri, but secretly recruiting officers. Then, after the 85 uprising, maneuvering during the transition and opposing peace efforts during the democratic period.
Setting of the stage.
For the 1989 coup, which the article frames as the payoff for that long strategy, followed by purges in the army.
So it questions their current strong backing of the army.
Deeply, given that history. Though it does distinguish between the institution of the army, which needs reform, and specific leadership actions.
So tying it all together, past and present.
Dr. Al-Zaylai's analysis suggests Sudan is stuck in a cycle. Democratic transitions keep failing because the break with military intervention is never clean or complete.
And the current war stems from that legacy.
It stems from military dominance, the failure of civilians to unite effectively, the long game played by the Islamists, and neglecting crucial reforms like those in the unions and the security sector.
So superficial fixes won't cut it.
Not at all. The article calls for ending military rule for good, building real civilian unity based on democratic principles, comprehensive security reform, strengthening civil society, and accountability. A fundamental rethink.
It's a powerful use of the 85 uprising as a mirror for today, really. Those lessons about military overreach, the absolute need for unity, the importance of civil society, and these complex political military ties. They seem crucial.
They really are. Understanding that history gives you so much context for the complexities now.
Yeah.
And it leaves you, the listener, with a pretty challenging thought, doesn't it? If Sudanese history shows this recurring pattern.
This cycle of military intervention and fragile transitions.
What does it really take to break free? What fundamental shifts need to happen in society, in the political culture, to actually achieve stable, lasting democracy? What role does everyone from the elites to the grassroots have to play in that?
That is definitely something to reflect on. Thanks for unpacking that with us.
My pleasure. It's important stuff.